intro.
That should be the intro. Should we just do that for a couple of minutes? Should we do that for 5 minutes straight? Since that's the opening of this movie. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, yes, this is Movie World Marathon. We're back, and we're on a new marathon. We're on Superman, which is gonna be super fun. I'm Andrew.
Superman. I'm Mack.
Yeah, change it up. Cool stuff. Yes, Superman the movie, which I guess is the official title of this movie, came out 1978. Directed by Richard Donner. Came out December 15th, specifically 1978. Starring, of course, are Christopher Reeve, Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, Margot Kidder, Valerie Perrin as Miss Tessmacher. And we got Glenn Ford as Jonathan Kent. Jeff East as Little Clark Kent. That's fun. And Terrence Stamp as General Zod for like 2 minutes. And a handful of others, but those are the big ones. So yeah, starting a new marathon, our first superhero marathon, which is really funny because anyone who knows us outside of this, most of our movie conversations involve superheroes. But
true,
it was very fortunate, I think, to have a Superman movie this year as a fun reason to do this marathon.
In terms of timing, definitely.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because like our good options were Captain America, Fantastic Four, or Superman, and if we did Captain America, a lot of it's kind of out of context, and if we did Fantastic Four, then they would have been awful. So Superman was kind of the best bet. So yes, suffice to say, I'm excited to do Superman. Fun opportunity. This is depending on how we do this one. This is either gonna be a continuous downward graph or a potential uptick if we include Superman Returns. Don't know if we're doing that one yet or not. It's technically a part of the series. I think canon wise, Superman Returns is the 5th movie in this series, so we probably should. But
we probably should, and I'd be fine with that. I don't think I've ever really watched intentionally anything past Superman 2.
Yeah,
which would be cool.
I know it gets rough.
Yeah. Which is interesting because I still love this movie for the nostalgia, but I will say rewatching it older, it took some hits I did not expect.
Really? Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
So, you wanna just bring on your initial thoughts then, since we're here?
Sure. It has all of the things that I remember it having as a kid, which is awesome in the sense that I really liked this movie as a kid. I think it's honestly, if we exclude comic-inspired kids' cartoons and content like that, this may be my first superhero film. Because we caught it on TV one time when we were in a hotel room, and I started watching it. I was like, I don't know what this is. And then Superman showed up, and I was like, okay, I now know what this is, but I have no idea what I'm watching. So I kept watching.
Cute.
And I will say, I think that was kind of my experience with the film for a while, which may explain why sitting down and watching it now was a different experience. I caught most of it on television, which means I probably never intentionally sat down and watched it start to finish. And every time I can think of watching this film, I was watching it with somebody, and we were hanging out while we were watching it. Now, we did the point when we put the film on was to watch the film, so it wasn't like we were ignoring it. But if there were any dead moments in the film, as I think there are quite a few, I had a person there that was keeping me focused and engaged and entertained. I felt like watching it through this time, I had a really hard time staying focused. It is 2 hours and 30 minutes long?
Yeah, it's 2 hours and 24 minutes. Long.
You kind of feel most of those minutes.
Okay.
At least I did in this experience. But I still think it looking at it as an early superhero film and as a Superman film, it does a lot of things that it needs to do. It has generally good characterizations. It has, Superman that takes a lot of his time just helping citizens, which I think is awesome, because sometimes that, especially in the current superhero climate, we have a tendency to forget that it's the average people the heroes are supposed to be saving. They are supposed to fight aliens and whatnot when time calls for it, but if a building's falling down, their job is to go over and protect as many people as they can from the building that's falling down, not watch in horror.
Mm-hmm.
So it was good to see all of that sort of return to basics. It was nice to see like Clark growing up, and like Ma and Pa are real good in this film. Although I will say I'm not a huge fan of when Pa dies. People have been using that for forever. Maybe that's even built into the comics. But I prefer it when Pa gets to live. I've seen a few versions
I
of
see.
that, and
I like the lesson
yeah,
that this one teaches, though.
that's true. I actually
Yeah, I
that's
don't
my first note is
disagree.
stop killing dads via heart
Yeah,
attack. It's played out.
fair
But then my
enough.
immediate after note is Soups is better with okay, teaching Clark about loss and limitation is important, especially the version that we get here
Yeah.
where he may not have all of his powers right away, but he definitely is like a super powered kid growing
Mm-hmm.
up in Smallville. So that's an important lesson for him to learn. It helps him value human life and like kind of become the hero that he is. So
Right.
it's a good narrative choice. I'm just getting real tired of the, oh no, dad ran a little bit or had a scare and now he has a heart attack and now we have a
Mm-hmm.
dead father trope. Like
That's
it happens a
that's
lot.
understandable. I do think though that, so okay, you're not wrong, but I might have to pump the brakes on you just a little
Okay,
bit
do it.
because there is a great deal here that I think is very nitpick worthy. I got plenty of them. Most of them are for
Mm-hmm.
fun because in so many ways this is the wheel. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like
Oh yeah, this is the
this is the
first.
first big one. And so they are inventing so much of this stuff. They're doing so much of this stuff for the first time. Some of the tropes may not have been tropes when they did it. You know,
The
like
dead dad trope is definitely a trope, but I will allow you to.
a little, but not in this way, right? Like it's
Mhm.
not in this way. So I understand where you're coming from, but I think in this instance, watching it, especially then, it wouldn't have been as hard a trope, especially because it's natural causes. Not a bad guy that could have been stopped, not a
Mm-hmm.
tornado that you could have helped with, not a, just a
There was
random.
nothing he could do as
Right, there's
Superman.
literally
That's
nothing that it like outside of some sort of crazy, Doctor Strange style character. There's nothing that most of the superheroes could do. So I think it's important. If you wanted to tweak it or nitpick that specifically, I would have appreciated a little more time with Pa Kent. We get 2 scenes with
it.
Pa Kent and then he bites it.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's not a
Mm-hmm.
lot. I do have to give it
Agreed.
credit though because quick disclaimer, footnote, whatever. I won't actively shit on Man of Steel that much as we go through this series, but when it's relevant, I'm going to because I think that
Uh-huh.
we get more. I care more for Pa Kent in this one by the time he dies and the few little bits we get than I
Fair.
do with Kevin Costner's Pa Kent
Oh,
and the
dude.
entire opening of Man of Steel by the time he bites it. And
Yeah,
I think I want to say in this moment that's more credit to Donner than it is shitting on Snyder. I am known to do that,
absolutely.
but right now I just think
Because
that little moment is very powerful and it works very well in the Superman the movie.
I have some critiques on dialogue and script writing, but generally
Sure.
speaking, the characters in this film, for as quickly as they are introduced and used, are actually very singular and well done.
Mhm.
You get Ma and Pa for a quick bit of the film, and you still feel like you fully know them.
Mhm.
Like you said, Pa we get essentially 2 scenes with, and yet they managed to really sell that relationship so much that we really do care when he
Mhm.
dies. Um, and Ma is not in it for much longer than Pa is, and you still feel how important that connection and that relationship is for Clark.
Mhm.
Um, you get introduced to Lois and a lot of the like Daily Planet reporters super quickly, and then they just immediately feel like they're a part of the fabric of the world rather than
Mhm.
feeling like they're strangers dropped into the situation. Everything feels like it's lived in and exists together and has for a while. So there's some credit to be had for that, and especially in the sense that they managed to squeeze in quite a bit in this film. I kind of forgot. I mean, we've got a little bit of Jor-El as a prosecutor. We've got Jor-El as a scientist. We've got his argument with the council. The council representing, like, they get a little bit of political commentary in, both on like the justice system and those who are afraid of, great disasters. We get some weird science mumbo jumbo school stuff with Clark and the Fortress of Solitude.
We'll talk about it. Keep going.
We'll talk about it. But that's just the Krypton stuff, We also get a pretty good quick history of Lex and who he is in this world. We get a whole what's her name? Taskmaster?
I never know how to pronounce her name. Let's agree. Let's agree for this. We're gonna call her Taskmaster because that's kind of what it sounds like.
I mean, her first name is Elle.
Okay, fine, Elle. Taskmaster's more fun. I don't know if she's a movie creation or not. She's in the new one, and I don't know if that's because she's as like a homage to this movie or if she is a comic book character. I do not know for sure.
She's an interesting character to talk about. I kind of want to loop back to her. Otis is basic, but he's fun. Yeah. It's fine. And I mean, like, even Perry White, who, again, he's in for like what, 2 to 3 scenes. Their editor, he feels like a pretty fleshed out character. Like, we know what he's interested in and what he wants, and it's not like he's. Yeah, but like, if that's, you get to know the character that way. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of really good character writing in the script, or maybe it's directing, because the script does have some weaknesses. But sure. yeah.
I do agree. I think I think there's going to be a lot of fun to be had discussing some of the genuine weaknesses and some of the fun nitpicks that just don't hold up due to time. So I want to get the positives kind of out of the way, give credit where credit is due kind of quickly. I think this is a fantastic superhero origin story. It's like the first and still one of the best in many ways. Christopher Reeve as Superman, all the chef's kiss, every single one of them. Christopher Reeve as Clark Kent, again, chef's kiss, going back and forth.
I prefer it, actually. Yeah. I think he's even better as Clark than he is as Superman.
I think it's because he has to act more, because Christopher Reeve was a rather charismatic, confident young man, and so it works more for Superman than it does Clark. So his interactions with Lois are great. Jimmy was great. White is great. Superman saving regular people and helping, all kinds of issues. All of that is wonderful. The flying effect for what it was at the time is pretty good, and as we'll see with each movie, it gets worse and worse, which is strange.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah. The theme, fantastic. John Williams, always crushing it. The score is
great.
So good. Iconic right away. The opening on Krypton, 50-50 for me personally. I honestly think that where Jor-El says it's just facts, and then it cuts to him talking to the council, that's where the movie should have started, because none of the Zod stuff is important for this movie. I understand that it sets up the next one really, really well, and this is in a time before secret endings and shit, but this is also in a time where the sequel wasn't necessarily a guarantee. Like, they didn't know, if I remember correctly, they didn't know for sure they were going to do. I think they may have actually filmed them very close together. I do not recall. But even so, you never know. So I really feel like you could have easily filmed that and held on to it for the opening of the second one and said, 2 years, a year before Krypton exploded, something like that. Or just film that then, and again, add the whole, 2 years before, whatever. To open with this...
I will say... sorry, you go ahead.
I was just saying, to open with this and then watch the rest of the movie, it's like, okay, first of all, we just had 5 minutes of opening credits, and then we had, a 5-minute opening scene that has absolutely no relevance at all, that's just kind of strange to open with that. I think it should just open immediately with off-screen dialogue, then cuts to inside of Krypton, the little science lab. It's just facts. It's this, it's that, it's genocide. Don't do this, man. Like, just start there. The drama is picked up. Anyone who's read a Superman comic knows what's happening. They know what it's addressing. Like, that's where you could have started. But seeing all that was cool.
Makes the most logical sense for sure. I was trying to figure out in my head, I was trying to justify the Zod scene. And I was like, I felt the same way. And I still kind of do feel the same way. Like, if I were the person directing and editing this film, I'd be like, this is a long film, and this first scene doesn't really have a ton of relevance. And we can put it in as a flashback at the beginning of the second film or somewhere in the middle if we need to. So, like, let's just save that for later. However, you do get the benefit of knowing that Jor-El is a just and righteous man because of this scene. Whereas, it's like if you just have him arguing with the council about the truth, then you do have him as sort of like a defender or a whistleblower for the truth, right? You get that value, but you don't really get the like justice value from Jor if you don't have the prosecution scene where he's like, you guys are actively harming our society and I will lock you away because of it. Like, that is the right ethical decision to make. And so obviously it's way more relevant to the second movie, but in terms of establishing character, it does have a little part to play. Still probably would have cut it, though.
I can see what you're saying. I don't think it's enough to warrant having that be the opening. Just because again, there's no like time jump that's illustrated. It's like, hey, this planet is about to explode in like 30 days, and I'm gonna spend my time worrying about this.
Fair. I think there is a time skip that's communicated by the change of clothes, but I could be wrong about that. I mean, it feels like they've gone into a new era of fashion.
Maybe. I don't know. That is a nitpick though, because again, I think part of it is saved because of how good Superman 2 is in some ways. You know, like if it was bad, then the opening would be worse. I still don't think this should be the opening. But you know, we get to the Science Council, and I have nitpicks, but in general, this adaptation of the Superman comic, I think, is fantastic. The visual aesthetic of Krypton and the Kryptonians with their cool glowy suits, all of it's cool.
I do feel like the high vis is a really cool choice for the costumes, like the bright fluorescent reflection the costumes have. But I do feel like it clashes with their set design, which is a bit of a shame. It's like the bigger, larger set pieces behind them, those are super detailed, unless they're like paintings of Kryptonian's background and landscape, which those are really pretty. But generally speaking, the big set pieces behind the actors aren't much of anything. So the high vis costumes actually really distract from that, and that's cool. But then we get to like the crystal stuff with like what they're building with the little escape ship and everything. And I feel like the high vis costumes completely drown out how absolutely beautiful all those crystals are in the scene. And that's a bit of a bummer for me because I think it's really pretty.
I can see that. I get that.
Nitpick.
It's fair. I do think it's kind of cool that this design of Krypton kind of showed why Clark might have been drawn to the North Pole, because it's all this white, crystalline, barren area. I don't know if that's because of the comics or not. Every other version of Krypton I've seen has been more like a lush, maybe not lush, but like utopia. More like your typical utopian planet. In some ways, you know, when I'm being more nitpickish and a little more aggressive, Krypton fucking sucks, man. It's ugly as hell. It's a disgusting planet. And we see more of that later in Superman Returns when they grow that island. It's awful. That's for later. You know, like they're super advanced. Their tech is cool. They probably have really nice chairs.
I do feel like,
I don't know,
the kind of destruction that is visiting this Krypton, I think, is a bit of a narrative weakness. Because it's not like there are slow tectonic shifts happening in the planet. It's not like there's like a buildup of some sort of gas or atmospheric change that'll suddenly burst the planet. It's the sun is encroaching on your planet and your council is denying it even as the sun grows
Yeah.
closer to your planet.
Yeah.
That is
We're
really hard to
yeah.
justify.
We're getting into the nitpick territory, which I don't blame you, because in some ways when you scrutinize it, it is hard. Just finishing up my positives real quick.
Okay,
The
go back.
sequence in
Go
which
ahead.
he saves California is cool. Lifting the tectonic plate is
Mm-hmm.
really cool. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I love how Christopher Reeve shifts between Superman and Clark Kent. It's very well
Yeah,
done,
very well
masterful.
done.
I love how he catches the bullet. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't hate the costume. I'm gonna come back to the
Mm-hmm.
costumes, but I think again for what they did, it's great and it works. I love the little nod to how they're like phone booths aren't a thing anymore, and he goes to the
A
spinning door
revolving
to
door.
yes, it's very cool. Um, Suffice to say, real quick, 'tis a whale for what it is, for what it does,
Mm-hmm.
for what it did, and everything that came from it. 'Tis a whale. And I do think I honestly think, and you might have to correct me here. I don't think it's as campy as some people maybe remember it. And I don't know if that's because I'm caught up in public perception or public opinion. It shifts, like we talked about this before, especially with superhero stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It ebbs and flows, and right now, especially when this episode will come out, we are once again comfortably in an era where capes aren't weird anymore. We've got
Right.
Sentry, Thor, Doctor Strange, Vision, a new Superman, and even at this point, Homelander. Even though they make fun of him for it, we're in a time where seeing someone fly around in a cape isn't weird. However, I think minus potentially the fact that they are tights and Luthor, actually, there's nothing really in this movie that's overly campy. He's saving relatively believable situations. He's a believable person. He's dealing again like with the death of his dad. He's getting a regular job. We see the destruction of Krypton right away. Things feel very grounded. People's reactions to him feel relatively real. Like I don't think the movie like
Was
when
one
you
of the best
think
parts of the film,
yeah,
honestly. The fact that they
yeah.
genuinely like they invested in letting extras have reactions.
Yes, it's.
Man,
I think
that
it
was
works very
cool.
well. And I've heard people
Mhm.
talk about how Iron Man made it real. X-Men showed that superheroes could be cool. Spider-Man is the one
Mhm.
that really
Mhm.
proved that could be done. And the Batman, the '89 Batman, that proved that superheroes could be cool. And I was just watching this again though and really paying attention. I'm like, I don't really think this did anything to hurt the idea of a superhero
Superheroes?
movie being taken
Yeah.
seriously. Like this started off pretty strong. If unless you think I'm giving it
Yeah.
too much credit.
Well, I think I look at it a little bit differently because I think we end up at the same place, but we get there differently.
Hmm.
Um, I definitely would put this movie in a category of camp,
Okay.
in the sense that I mean, the dialogue and the rhythms are very radio show.
Mm.
They're just, they're it's almost like they're pausing for laughs sometimes. There's some theater acting here rather than like, camera acting.
He was a
Um,
Juilliard grad. Let's not forget.
okay, but still,
Okay,
um,
fine.
I think in defense, Christopher Reeves actually does give one of the best performances in the film. I think Lois's actor holds the bar a little bit. There are times where it's weaker, but and then I think Lex does an okay job, but he's given a very, very classic cartoon villain
Yeah.
role.
See, I
So he does a good job, but it feels slightly off
right.
sometimes the tone of the film.
Yeah. So
Um,
Gene Hackman, I think, is doing great with what he's given
mhm,
to do. But what he is given
mhm.
to do is a villain out of the Adam West Batman, down to the
Yeah,
oafish part or oafish
sidekick.
sidekick and hot lady friend. And
Yeah.
see, I think I agree with you, and I don't, I'm cutting you off, and I should stop. I think he is campy consistently, and
Hmm.
he's my least favorite part of the movie. But I want you to continue if you have more to say about him in the camp.
To me, just in general, like the camp in this film, I want to say works more than anything. Not that it necessarily is shows high skill, just that the tone of the film is Superman is a genuine guy who wants to help people, and so his situations tend to be a little bit more straightforward. He's not the guy who like pops into the scene, says some sort of sassy quip and then runs away. He is the straightforward hero. So when he plays it straight, it feels a little campy because we're
Mm-hmm.
just not used to it. But that is kind of what the movie is. I do think it comes to the movie's detriment every now and then. Like, I'm very excited to see how this new Superman film takes a lot of these ideas and brings them to what we would expect from a film today. But then I do feel like it's because of the moments that are genuine and a little bit campy and a little bit iconic because they are campy, like the suit, like him saving the cat from the tree. Those moments really make Superman what he is known to be in the pop culture today. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of an essential element to why this film works. Now, when you said that it is a whale, I kind of agree and I kind of don't.
Oh
Like we can get into
no.
this maybe a little bit later, but I feel like it's maybe more of like an orca in the sense that like it looked like a whale when we first saw it, but now upon reflection, it's not quite a
Mm-hmm.
whale. But also, if I saw an orca, I'd still be pretty excited, you know? Like,
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
yeah, yeah.
I we might fight this one. Cause
Okay.
because like I too have watched this movie and thought, dear baby Jesus, this is boring. Because like there are
Mhm.
many parts that are long. Like I had to pause to get some food and saw that Supers doesn't actually show up until halfway through this movie. But in some
Hmm.
ways, when I was giving this one during this viewing and I was paying attention trying to get into it, I'm fairly entertained from Jor-El talking to the council to Soups going to the Daily Planet. I don't really
Yeah,
know
I
how
actually
the
am
hell
too.
they fit an hour of stuff into that because it doesn't feel like there's an hour of stuff there. Which I
No, I
think is
agree. I think we spent probably just shy of 30 minutes on Krypton and just shy of 30 minutes on Baby Kent, like saying at the Kent's place.
mhm.
Maybe it's longer than I'm thinking though for those things. But I don't know. I actually feel like the first half of this film is more engaging than the
Mhm.
second half of this film
A
up
little
to the point
bit
where we get to the
because
rockets.
because it's I think it's because of Luthor. Luthor is what
Hmm.
makes this feel campy and cartoonish because I think Superman there's definitely potential for camp, but I think that sometimes camp might be just confused for kindness, and he's just a
Or
nice guy, and
simple
so
iconic behavior,
sure,
Like,
sure.
yeah.
And I don't think it's a perfect movie, but I get caught up a little bit in how important this is to like the biggest franchises that I love. That maybe I give it a little more credit, or maybe you're not giving it enough. I don't know yet. I don't know yet. We're still talking. We're still talking. I do think that there are some weird nitpicky things, um, and I don't know how important they are all the time because of what this is adapting. Like at the time, it's adapting a very iconic, well-known story that is, at the time not taken very seriously. Like
Hmm.
it's a comic book movie. So because in many ways that wasn't the goal, I don't expect
Hmm.
it a great deal. I was surprised at how
Yeah.
much the Superman, Lois, Perry White, Kent stuff ends up becoming, like how serious it is. And I think the contrast between that and Luthor is actually what hurts it. Nitpick
Yeah.
wise,
Agreed.
yeah. Nitpick wise, the conversation with the Science Council on Krypton is insane. What does it hurt to evacuate the planet, find out he's wrong, and come back? Like, oh my god. Um, and then, okay, don't make a panic. Fine. Okay, I promise me and my wife won't leave. What is that gonna matter? Are you guys advanced enough to leave the planet or not? Because if you are, go on vacation. Who cares?
Yeah.
I would say honestly, that's the one thing that maybe Man of Steel did right was because we now, and again, this I think this is a product of the time, and so I don't want to crap on it too much. But when Mr. Fantastic finds out the world is ending, he creates a lifeboat for like the most important people he could think of. And when Jor-El finds out the planet is ending, he's like, you know what? Out of
Let me build a tiny
spite,
little cradle size.
out of spite for you fuckers, I'm gonna sit back and watch as this planet
Yeah.
dies. But I'm gonna save my kid, and
My kid.
also
Nobody
technically,
else.
yeah, my dog, because I'm not that crazy. I'm not gonna test it on my kid. So there is a little bit of like, could you have not built that rocket just a tad bigger? But fine, sure.
I mean, I think there is. Okay, so weirdly, when I was watching this, I also watched the first 2 or 3 episodes of the animated like Superman
I think it's
cartoon
better.
because it is. That's
It's
what I was
better.
gonna say. But it's clear that they took inspiration from this film for the story. It's not just the comic thing. They clearly used some of the beats from this film, the '78 film, to inform their version of Superman's origin story, and it works really well. But in that version, there actually is a conversation between Jor-El and Laura, I think, and she says, "No, I'm not going to go with you because something about him needing to like support him or something like that. Like, you know, she's trusting that the place Jor's sending Cal is going to be fine for him." Which is a little crazy, but like, hey, you know, that is a choice that you can make and it would work. Plus, there are lots of versions where Kara is supposed to go with him.
Right, or first sometimes.
Or first, yeah. And then there are versions where Kara was not a part of the plan and she was on like a splinter of Krypton floating through space for a while. There's a bunch of different origin stories for her. But this particular situation where the council absolutely refuses to believe that this very clearly growing, encroaching star is not going to harm their planet, and George is sitting back and being like, well, I guess all I can do is build a shiny little crystal cradle for my kid and send him off into space.
Right.
It doesn't quite work. And kind of to your point about how Luther maybe ruins the film, I felt like the film was getting really serious actually when we were talking about all the journalism stuff that Lois was doing, and like they were, you know, they even argue about how to spell rapist. Like it's you know, they get pretty adult for a second. They even get to like they kill a detective in a kind of gruesome way. We don't see the body, but it's clearly graphic, meant to be an awful death. But then when we actually get to Luther himself, I mean, my note is he's nerfed. Like, this is Lex Luthor. He's living in a world where they have presented real issues. There's a war and starvation happening in other countries that our characters are actively like engaging with, and our big villain has a real estate scheme.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, he is going to kill a bunch of people, and he's using like missiles to do it, so that is scary. But real estate?
Yeah.
Is what we want to go
he's
with.
Also, yeah, it's very confusing because he's buying this land through LexCorp, but he's also a known criminal.
Yeah.
So, like, I know that
he's
nowadays,
in the sewers in a mansion, which I will say that set's actually really cool.
Okay,
but
yeah,
it's weird.
This idea of being a known criminal, having the cops after you, and also being able to operate legitly is weird. Like, I know that these days that kind of means you can be the president, but like back in the day, that was but seriously, it's to have the cops be in pursuit of him and him being in hiding, like you said, but also being able to like, what do you think you're gonna do after you blow up California and you own this land? Then you can leave your secret base and somehow you're fine. Now you don't think they're gonna investigate that? What are you gonna do? Yeah. It's also he's also,
and
we've
then,
got
like,
this.
The kryptonite thing comes out of nowhere too.
Don't even we can't, not yet. Not yet.
Okay, not yet. Not yet.
No, honestly, it's just a second. It's just a second because
Because we're right there.
Well, because that's more important than this part, which is Hackman didn't want to shave his head, so we have this Luthor who's like ashamed of it, and so he's always wearing these weird wigs, and then he wears a
That
bald
was
cap
kind
for
of funny,
2 seconds.
though.
It's dumb. It's just
It's kind of
dumb.
funny.
It's dumb. It's just dumb. Like Luthor, I think you put it perfectly. He's nerfed. He's a cartoon. He's ridiculous. And I think his intro should have been when the whistle starts. I think that if Superman is doing Superman stuff, some guy is lurking in the background, and then all of a sudden our intro to Luthor is the whistle thing, and then he meets him, that would have been awesome. You need to move around some things so it makes sense chronologically and we get to spend more time with Luthor, but I think that would have been way cooler. That being said, before we get to the kryptonite thing, it's really dumb, no matter who you are, superhero-wise, to do an interview and explain your already very limited weaknesses to a reporter. Doesn't matter how cute she is. That was dumb to list the things you can't see through, and all. Oh God! So then, yes, we know now that Superman is from the planet Krypton, which the whole world is like, you know what? Yeah,
Of course, aliens. Why not?
yeah. We went to the moon 9 years ago, and yeah, we're not going to vet this at all. This is clearly an alien from a planet that we've never heard of, that's conveniently gone. That's all good and fine. You know what that means, Miss L. Taskmaster? It means there's meteorites that I just know for some reason are gonna be so radioactive. That's like the way he put it. It's so radioactive that
it's gonna knock him out.
Only hurt him. That's a kryptonite flaw, honestly, in general. That because like in the comics, long-term exposure to kryptonite can hurt humans, but the fact that something that is radioactive enough to hurt Superman but not immediately eviscerate humans' faces, whatever.
I've always assumed it had. I mean, the non-scientific logic is that Superman gets powered by the yellow sun, and a piece of radioactively charged planet of his origin from a red sun would somehow interfere with that, is what I've always understood it to be. But that, like, doesn't make any kind of scientific sense because his powers don't really make any kind of scientific sense.
See, that's what I interpreted it as too, though, is that kryptonite, it almost like it just cuts through his power, it drains his power because it's a piece of that world. But the kryptonite, it hurts the Kryptonians and Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, before they have powers. Like, it hurts them as is. Remember, like when they're adding the lead to the planet lining to try to keep them alive. So anyway, that's not what we're here to discuss, the origins and work of kryptonite. But it's
so there's also a timeline issue because
I caught it too. Go on.
Okay. Yeah, when we are in the Fortress of Solitude and we're hearing the pre-saved monologue from Jor-El, and they have this weird thing where he escapes his body and learns metaphysically for 12 years and then comes back.
That's so weird.
He loses most of his 20s, if not all of them.
All of them, because he was 18. He spent an entire decade in the Fortress of Solitude being homeschooled. And then
presumably presumably that homeschooling with Jor-El from Krypton is enough to get him a journalism degree so he can work at the Daily Planet. And this is not what I meant to talk about. Anyway,
I think that's a good thing to talk about, though, because like there's no reason. I'm sorry. I'm derailing. I'm so sorry.
Go for it.
There's no reason for Clark Kent to actually be as bumbling as he is, because little Clark Kent wasn't like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's a persona that he decides to put on. But you could almost interpret it as, no, you haters. That's how he would be. because he hasn't socialized with anyone in 18 years. He doesn't know how to interact with adults and how to interact with people. It's like, that's not a good argument when he just spent 12 years in space school learning how to deal with people. I honestly think, Jor, it would have been better for him to go to at least a state school for 4 of the 12 years so that he could actually be integrated into, like, to send your alien boy to Earth, which you already know is basically a backwater planet with really good vitamins, and decide he's gonna spend the first 3 years of his life in a space pod and be fine. He's then gonna crash and spend the next 15 years being a superpowered kid that can't do anything and live in fucking Kansas, can you imagine? And then he's gonna spend 12 years in an ice cave and interact with nobody, and then turn 30 and then go out into the world and start saving. Do you think there might have been some things for him to do in the last decade and a half that he could have helped with? You think, Jor-El? You think maybe? Was he allowed to go on walks? Yeah. Did he get fresh air? In a better... okay, look. I don't want to say in a better movie. In a modern movie, that would have been a really good montage of Batman Begins style traveling the world, meeting multiple cultures, learning of things, learning why it's important to help out, and maybe even, again, modern movie, fighting for truth and justice, not in any one way, but maybe a learned right way, like one that helps all people,
well,
you know?
And I do really like that this film included the fact that Jor-El educated his son on both, like, scientific things and ethical arguments. It's very clear that Superman gets a moral education from his father in these 12 years, and that's why when he becomes a hero, it is so by the book, because even though he is technically breaking the law of the land, if you want to say, by being a vigilante, he is always on the moral high ground. He's always looking out for the little guy. He's always using his strength in the best way that he can. It's like, that's something that you could argue is just, you're born like that. But that's not really how it happens. People get taught how to be good. And I like that that's included in this film. I just feel like 12 years of...
Could it have been 5?
Education. Yeah, it could have been 5. I would have accepted, like,
3.
5 perfectly fine, you know?
It also does explain why he knows how to use his
experience.
powers when he, like, breaks...
True.
So, I think Space School at the Fortress is an important part, a cool part even. It does not need to be over a decade. Like, good God. Anyway, back to the time issue.
Right. Time issue. Jor-El mentions in this little space school monologue that he's been dead for thousands of your Earth years.
Because of the time warping that occurred as he's traveling through the 28 known galaxies to get to Earth.
Which, like, that holds up in terms of, like, light speed travel. There is some time warping that happens when you travel at light speed.
Sure.
But, well, it, like, interstellar kind of stuff. But then, when Luthor's talking about how he's going to get this kryptonite, which he has randomly decided will take down Superman, he says that the planet exploded in roughly 1948.
30 years ago.
That's not possible, because if it takes Clark that long to get there from Krypton, why would an explosive piece of the planet just happen to be on the same trajectory and only take 30 years to get to Earth, where Superman took thousands?
So the only way to like deal with that is that the kryptonite did take just as long to get there, and for some reason Luthor is misunderstanding. Maybe it's to illustrate that he's not that smart and that the planet died around when Clark was born, which would be roughly 30 years ago. Like just look by looking at
That's
him,
true.
which is still dumb because the movie is giving us mixed information. I honestly, though, I think the whole interstellar space time blah 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 is meant to sound kind of intellectual to give it some credibility, which is fine. You know, they would make it a little more adult with the space stuff. I think it's dumb because was it Lara L?
Mhm.
She mentions how Earth is thousands of years behind them.
Mhm.
Thousands of years, and then when we get there it's thousands of years later. So
That's also a problem.
did Jor-El send him to like what would have been the 1700s? That's not, I'm sorry, that's not even thousands of years. Like to what? Jesus times?
Yeah.
Pre-Egypt times? Like what were you sending your child to, knowing what he see? That's also, this is a different Superman thing. Were you sending your kid to this place knowing he would basically be a god? Like
In
that's a
some
little
versions he is.
irresponsible. Well, I
Jor-El
know.
knows.
Yeah, like but
I
in
don't know
this
if this
one,
version does or not.
it's
I guess he
very
probably would.
confusing. Like I'm very intrigued to know what kind of Earth Jor-El was observing and
hmm
what Earth he thought he was sending him to. And it's
hmm
just some of this
Wouldn't it
stuff.
be hilarious if you prepared him for like a Roman Empire level of like advancement, and then Soups gets to Earth and he's like, "We got cars in Kansas. I don't know
Yeah,
what you
I
wanted
don't,
from me."
yeah, I don't really. I think this is only an issue and only a discussion of topic because they want to talk about the time dilation. You don't need to do that. You really don't.
Yeah,
It really doesn't matter because
it doesn't matter.
I don't know exactly what the rules are off the top of my head of the Phantom Zone, but we have versions of the Phantom Zone in which time still operates within the Phantom Zone. And by the time
Mhm.
that, you know, Zod, Ursa, and the monster, whatever they call him, the aberration, whatever, they're not thousands and thousands of years old unless time doesn't, you know, go by in the Phantom Zone. I bet.
I mean, it's supposed to, but there are versions where it does.
Yeah, it's hard to
So
know sometimes with comics,
yeah,
but
yeah.
all that to say, the time thing is weird. Don't know why we're doing that.
hmm
And the kryptonite thing is so like I wouldn't have been upset if there was some sort of smarty pants scene where he's like, okay, he's this level powerful, comes from a planet in which he didn't have powers. It's possible that material from that world might be able to hurt him. Let's do the math. Let's look at some stellar cartography and let's steal, collect, buy every meteorite that's landed on this planet in the last, let's say, 30 years to find kryptonite. But to open a book and turn to a
hmm
page and like that one, like you just know that, do you? And you just happened
hmm
to be right. You didn't want to test it. Like again, I
hmm
hate that I'm in a position where I'm giving Snyder credit. At least that version of Luthor tested it before he went and started trying
hmm
to smack him around with it. Like
Yeah.
the alternate universe in which it's just a rock, and he opens that lead
Can you
box.
imagine
What is
what's
this?
the rock
Is
about, Luther?
this crystal candy? What are those
It's
LEDs?
glowing. Is it gonna blow up? Like,
What is
what's going
this?
on here?
What are you doing? What was going? Yeah, so I'm
Or imagine
sorry.
if it didn't kick in right away. Like, you know, because he has no idea what kryptonite does to Superman.
Yeah,
He thinks it'll weaken him,
right.
right? But like radioactivity doesn't impact a human right away
Uh-huh.
necessarily. Maybe it's something that slowly impacts. Maybe it just gives him cancer. That doesn't
Right.
stop him from like beating you to the ground.
Imagine if it was the red kryptonite. And red kryptonite has
Yeah.
random effects. It could have given him more powers. It could have duplicated him. It could have turned him into a giant fire-breathing bird. You have no idea. Like,
Mhm.
I think this movie deserves a great deal of credit in many ways. The kryptonite thing is the first instance of you all know what this does. So
Yeah.
I know what this
Mhm.
does. So that's what it's gonna do. Deal with it.
Absolutely.
Like this is like the
Even
first
like
big example of that.
almost everything in this film is discovered or explained fairly naturally, where like it would make sense for the person to do that explaining, or it would make sense for that to come up in the situation. I'm thinking of like the particular scene where Clark reveals that he can't see through lead, right? Like that's just weird premise, but you know, it's very natural in that moment for him to be like, can't see through lead. What do you know? Telling a journalist that, kind of dumb.
Yeah.
But then that, you know, Lex finds out about it very naturally. So the lead thing sitting right next to the kryptonite thing, I think makes the kryptonite thing even worse, because the, like, you know, the lead thing happens very naturally, where it comes up in conversation, it's posted in a newspaper, Lex is paying attention, so he reads it, and then he uses it to his advantage. Then we have the kryptonite, which he's housing in the lead container, and it's the most this is kryptonite, go with it thing, and like the entire movie is just, and it stands out as a bad piece of writing in the rest of the film. I really do think. I don't know, the rest of it's pretty good, but it's kind of disappointing for kryptonite to be the one thing that they're like, we're just gonna go with it, we can't really explain it right now, we don't got the time. Okay.
You had time. Okay. You had a lot of time. You had 2 hours and 24 minutes.
A lot of your time in things you didn't need to.
Yeah, you could have used some of that time to do something here, you know? We are, speaking of which, we are slowly running out of time. I'm sorry, quickly we're running out of time. We have to talk about the time travel. How do we feel about the time travel?
Honestly, it's one of the dumbest things in the film, and yet I'm kind of torn on it.
I was gonna say I'm torn. I'm very torn.
It is one of, like, it's even, I would even believe kryptonite before I would believe that rotating the Earth the other direction reverses time.
Yeah.
Or that flying around the Earth at a fast enough speed would reverse its rotation and then reverse time.
Destroy it.
Even as a kid, I sat there. Again, this is one of the first superhero movies I ever watched. I sat there, I watched him fly around the planet. I noticed a turn around, and I went to my dad. I was like, "What is he doing?" And he was like, "Oh, he's like reversing the planet." And then they started showing all like the scenes reversing, and I just went, "This is kind of dumb. Yeah. This is like maybe the dumbest ending I've ever seen."
Yeah.
However, the acting and the performance in it is so, like, if you escape,
it really sells it.
Yeah, exactly. If you escape the literal sense of reversing the planet would not reverse time, this becomes an incredible act of love and sort of defiance against, you know, the fact that he lost. He's like, I will not give this up, right? And he reverses time to bring back Lois and undo a lot of the damage. Like, that is a really cool character moment.
Yeah.
We just probably could have come up with a better way to solve this problem, because I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
For a brief time, I did wonder, because I hadn't seen the movie in a couple of years. I remember the scene. And I thought, well, that's just visual representation of what he's doing, which is traveling so fast that he's going back in time, but that's not what happens, because he corrects the Earth's spin. He fixes it. So I'm of the mind now that not every movie needs a George Lucas style visual massive retcon. We don't have to go back to every movie and change it every 15 years. However, this one I wouldn't be upset about it. If he flies away and like flies around the sun, Star Trek style, just going fast to go back in time to do what he did, like, cause like he's Superman, right? He's super everything. Flash goes back in time because he's fast. Superman can go back in time because he's fast, and he just does the same thing. Cause like what happens is just, you know, visual, not CGI, you know, because of the time, but let's just say CGI. So just replace that with him flying super quick around the sun to get the speed boost. He breaks the time barrier, he ends up on Earth. Then the same scene takes place, right? We still get the yell, we still get the him flying and the crying and all that, but let's just go back and tweak that one, right? You know, just go back and tweak that. On top of that, it's a little bit you could fly this fast the whole time? Couldn't you have
That's
just
true.
couldn't you have just done
If you
that
could
a
fly
second ago?
fast enough to reverse the flow of
But
time,
not to
then you
get
could have
missiles?
flown fast enough to get to both missiles
Yeah.
and Lois.
I am willing
That.
to give him the credit, the slack for like the need wasn't there emotionally
Emotional
until Lois
distress.
was gone. But then we come back to this interesting dilemma of, is Superman teaching us the wrong lesson by reversing time, going against his father, breaking the rule,
Right.
going back in time
It's
just to
hidden for
make
you to
himself
interact with human
happy.
history.
You know,
I
like
know it is technically a selfish choice. Everything else is fine. It's just Lois that's gone.
and how it should have ended, honestly, more than anything else I've ever seen, has used this joke so well. Like the Amazing Spider-Man 2, how it should have ended, just has Spider-Man threatening both of them. It's like, bring it back, reverse the time. I've seen you did it for your girlfriend. Now you can do it for mine. Turn back the time. Turn back the time. Like, because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Soups. Like, I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
It's an interesting quandary, but we never really address it again in any of the movies. So,
And it's never a power that Soups ever demonstrates in really any media ever again.
yeah. Also, I did
It's because
wonder.
we all universally agree that it's a dumb decision.
Kind
It
of.
doesn't ruin the film for us. It barely ruins the moment for us, but it's a dumb decision.
Kind of. It also, he clearly goes back in time and stops something from happening. But what? Because I interpreted it as he comes back and he stops both the missiles in time. But Lois references the earthquake and the blowing up of the gas station. So you didn't even go back and stop both the missiles? You couldn't go back just a little bit longer? Like, what did you do? Because the crack doesn't open up behind her car.
Not only does the story, like the mechanic of turning back time not work, the practical way that they use the time travel also doesn't really work because they never go back and cut off the event that would have caused all the things that we see undo in this. So it kind of looks at like, I mean, again, I don't think this is what is meant to be communicated, but you know, we live in a world where there's been a lot of time travel sci-fi stories, and I would argue the 70s also has a lot of time travel stories in their back pocket. So it's not like the audience would be complete strangers to this sort of thing. But time travel has happened. We've undone a lot of the disasters because we just reversed time. But Superman is now no longer preventing those disasters or saving those people. So is he just standing there having a good old conversation with Lois while everybody dies
Like, what's
in
happening?
like the flood and everything?
What's happening here? Are there two
Or
Supermen
are we
now?
just going to pretend that because he saved them once, they stay saved, and for whatever reason, the disasters don't happen this time?
Yeah.
Neither of them are good
No.
answers because one doesn't make any sense, and the other makes Superman kind of a selfish villain.
Yeah.
So, what were they thinking? I don't understand.
I don't entirely either. So, yeah, look, it's not a perfect movie, but it's for what it is and what it did and what it had to do, it's pretty damn close. There's just some writing weaknesses that could be improved upon.
I didn't want to necessarily harp on this because I think it's more a sign of the times than is of anything else. But I do feel like there was a little bit of like machismo, I guess, like macho-ness in some of the male characters, even in Clark and Superman. And I don't just mean like, you know, they're putting on a show. I mean like the way that some of the female characters were written or interacted with was a little bit not my favorite.
I can agree with that. I don't like how Elle kisses Superman, and he's like, "Why'd you kiss me before you took off the kryptonite?" Well, you may not have let me. That's assault, right there.
Yeah,
That's not great.
And like there are just some moments where even Clark is a little demanding of Lois sometimes.
I know. He was very pushy with the flight dates.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily that I think every interaction should be like the super kind, most kind interaction between the two of them. They should be characters that interact like people do, but there just seemed to be like a general sense of maybe entitlement from the male characters towards the female characters.
I understand. Yeah, I see.
That I think largely just comes from probably a mostly male writing room. I think there actually was one female writing. Yeah, it was Leslie Newman was the one female writer named, but she is married to David Newman, who is also on the script writing team. So I wonder what that credit situation is.
Interesting.
Point is, I don't know how much I want to dock the film for it overall, but I had not realized as a kid how pushy some of the guys in this film could be, and it stood out to me on this rewatch.
I see that for sure. I was talking to a partner while we were watching this because do you look? I'm gonna be a little crass towards our last couple of minutes. Do you think that it's a fetish that Superman is basically cock blocking himself? Because he is reveling as Clark Kent and how Lois is just completely smitten with Superman.
Yeah.
Like he's smirking because he knows, like, oh, she likes me. Like, dude, what are you doing?
Not with the writing.
Are you like not manipulating this woman and also gassing yourself up? Like, this is weird. And it's people have talked about, understandably so, the incredible acting of when he goes from Clark to Superman in her apartment, like standing up straight, the voice, it's great. That is a visually fantastic moment showing Christopher Reeve's range, but it's also world that's Superman deciding, you know what? No. I'm going to keep lying.
To her.
I'm going to keep lying and make my date weird and awkward, knowing the whole time that's because this woman has got hots for another man, but that other man is me. And she doesn't know it, but I know it. Like, that's so weird. It's weird.
Lois in this film, to the writing room's credit, is someone who's pretty independent. She does whatever she wants to do. She's pretty argumentative. Like, she's not your classic fawning leading lady type, right? She's very Lois. However, there is not a single scene in this film where Lois has the advantage over Clark or Superman. It's always Clark who knows more or is doing something to protect her or is like operating like in a way that impacts her directly without her knowledge. And it reads a little creepy today. I don't know how it would have read back in the day necessarily, but like even the scene where he protects her from getting shot, he like kind of like makes fun of her like a little bit, you know, and
knows the contents of her purse, which can only mean that Superman peaked.
Yeah, which, like, you know, maybe he did when they got mugged and he was trying to decide how he wanted to play it, right? Like, is Lois going to fight for this, you know? Like,
or maybe she's carrying.
You know, yeah. But, like, just in general, like, there was a lot more power imbalance than I remembered. And you're always going to have a bit of a power imbalance with Superman. That's part of what makes his character interesting is the fact that he like holds to a high moral standard, even though if that went away, he'd be a serious threat. But just particularly in his interactions with Lois this time, they kind of stood out to me as like it'd be better if we could get a scene where she reminds him of his humanity or something, because
I like that.
There's not a lot that happens in this that she really genuinely checks him. It's mostly just him having fun watching her interact with things that she does not fully understand, which is a little odd in terms of power dynamic.
I think that's fair. I didn't love how, honestly, in that moment, she's shot because of her actions, and then Clark saves her. I kind of... The way I was trying to remember it was like that was going to happen anyway, and it was good that he was there. But it's not. She creates that situation in the end. And if he wasn't there, she'd be dead. But whatever. So to conclude, if this movie was a person in your family, I would say it's a really loving, hardworking, committed grandpa who's a little racist. Like, times have
Yeah.
changed. There are things that we don't do anymore. There are things we've improved upon, but damn it, we wouldn't be here without you. Like, that's kind of what
Mhm.
this is, if
That's
I
so
was being
fair.
honest. Yeah.
Hmm.
For me, it's still a
Very
whale,
founding
but
fathers.
yeah. But that's where I'm at
But,
on
yeah,
Superman 1.
I think that's a fair comparison in the sense that, like, if you were to release this updated today, you don't change the script necessarily, but you fix all the visual issues, maybe even speed up the pacing a little bit, but you kept all the character dynamics the same. You'd kind of be like, this is not that great.
Yeah.
But what it was
Right.
and what it gave to us is so worth it. And honestly, it could be worse. The fact
Mm,
that we are classifying a lot of our issues as nitpicks or
right.
as like continuity errors rather than like messaging errors,
Hmm.
that's pretty good
Yeah.
for a film from the
My
70s that's one of the first superhero films.
yeah. My only two legitimate issues in which I think something should have been changed is the time travel and the interpretation of Luthor. That's it. That's
Mhm.
it. The rest of
Mhm.
it, I think everything else works in one way or another.
Definitely need to fix Luther. I would also shift a few things around in the story just so that it speeds up a little bit.
Sure.
But
But there's
that's
potential there.
like
Like that those
that's kind of,
things if they're just
yeah.
some things might be out of order or the pacing might be a little weird and whatnot, but like
Hmm.
nothing is
Hmm.
egregiously bad or problematic
Hmm.
or needs to be changed other than pretty much just Luthor.
Yeah, I really wouldn't get rid of anything in the film. I keep the Fortress of Solitude, keep Ma and Pa, keep a lot of the actors, but in terms of villain, you really got to have a villain that's truly despicable
Hmm.
to go against Superman,
Or
and
charismatic
it
enough
lacks
to
with
go up against Superman.
mhm, mhm. Not a Batman villain, not a
Mm.
Batman villain. Like,
An
once we've
Adam
established
West Batman
worlds,
villain.
maybe we can get some crossovers, but we need to give Superman his particular style of villain, which allows him to be his particular style of hero. And I think we'd do a lot better in this film.
I think that's a good place to end for
Cool.
now. Next week will be fun. There's some cool
Yeah.
stuff to discuss, a little more action, a little more Superman stuff here and there, more weird gaslighting decisions, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it. As it is,
Yeah.
I think that's us for now.
That's us.
All right, bye.
Bye, guys.